Vivian Moore. We're the co-coordinators of the Entrepreneurial Center. So what we have today is an alumni panel, so we want to thank the Alumni Association for helping us put this together. So we're going to go ahead and let Mike, you want to introduce them, or do you want me to introduce?
Go ahead.
Okay, well, I have to look at the names. So we've got Ann here on the left. She's the CFO of the Creative Studio Promotions, correct? Mike Dokter here, he's the Motown Property Group. Okay, we got Carlos here on the end, on your right. He's the director for the Latino Business and Economic Development Center. And then we have James here in the middle. He's the CEO and owner of Radiator. Is that correct? Okay. So this is our second to last event that we are actually having in the center for this semester. We actually have a lunch and learn on Thursday from 11 to 1. So if your students are interested or if you are interested, please come and we can help you out in that modality. Okay. With that, I'll let Mike go ahead and take it.
Well, thank you guys. Thank you for taking time out of your day. Everybody's got schedules, everybody's got stuff going on. How many people actually operate and run a business right now? Little bit? Yeah. How many people are wanting to do that maybe? 4 seconds. Yeah. Cool. How many people aren't going to raise their hands no matter what? Okay. You tricked me. Come on now. Now this is really great, guys. And what I think is really awesome about Davenport is the fact that they care enough about making sure that their students, that people of the community have adequate information from people who have both experience with Davenport and experience outside of Davenport building things and partnering with them and making sure that projects are moving forward. I think it's awesome, especially when they invite individuals like this who are functionally working in the community every single day to help give their feedback. And I'm excited about it. I'm excited to be here. Those of you who have heard me babble before, you know a bit about my shtick, but I have a couple different degrees from Davenport, undergrad marketing and then my executive MBA. Currently, I operate a company called Motown Property Group in Detroit, Michigan. I spend my time between Grand Rapids and Detroit, and I absolutely love being able to come back and help in any way possible. I personally believe I'm here to fix problems, help people teach. I love that Davenport has given me the base to be able to start to grow to do that. So with that, I'm going to allow Carlos to introduce himself and Jim and Ann, and just give a little bit about their backgrounds so you guys know a bit about them, and then we'll get into some of the discussion.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Carlos Sanchez. I also work in academia, so my title is long because it's in academia. Those of you that are in academia understand that, but basically you're looking at the entire center, you're looking at it right now. So I treat my job and I treat the center that I work for as sort of like an enterprise, because I fundraise for my programs. So I basically sell my services. I recruit. I also sell that service, and I try to manage the program in a sustainable way. That because of course it's my business. I used to say when I was director of the Hispanic Chamber, I eat what I kill. It's not like that anymore, but yeah. So anyways, that is the center. Born and raised in Mexico City, I came to the U.S. about in 1998, so whatever that is, 20 years ago. And as soon as I got here, I did 3 years college in Mexico. When I came here, I realized I had to finish. And so I came to Davenport as an adult and finished here. So, to your point, the university gave me the basics, the tools, but also the inspiration in the way Davenport teaches gave me the inspiration to go out and pursue it and be able to have an entrepreneurial mindset. Although at that time we didn't speak that in those terms, it was an entrepreneurial mindset. So I have in my department I have 2 programs. One is leadership and professional development program for Latinos. And the other one is entrepreneurship. I teach entrepreneurship in the Latino community in Spanish at the Hispanic Center using curriculum that was developed by co-starters in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and now in collaboration here with Spring GR. So that's sort of what I do.
Awesome. Thank you.
That's great.
Follow it, buddy.
Yeah, right. So my name is Jim Czerew, and as they mentioned, I'm in the midst of my third startup. So Radiator is a music discovery app, but I actually, my primary company is named Tech Connect, and I started that 7 years ago, and that is a network security, network engineering company. So we specialize in high-end infrastructure, networking, network security, wireless e-commerce. And so I actually have another company that I started around that same time that actually specializes in ballroom dancing, teaching ballroom dance, and DJing and music at different events. So actually I have several different companies that I'm in the midst of, and I enjoy them all. So yeah, so far so good. So I graduated from Davenport back in 2007. Graduated with a degree in network security and network engineering, so a dual major. Soon after that, I actually met my first full-time job right out of college position. I met one of my coworkers in one of my classes. So we actually met. He said, all right, so he was impressed with what I was doing in class, and he said, we need to hire you. And so straight out of college, I was working enterprise healthcare, and I worked there for quite a while. But before that, even while I was still in school, funny enough, I actually met Ann years ago when I was a youngster. I was still in high school, and I was working at that location part-time, kind of nights and weekends. But then I was also working at the West Michigan Whitecaps. And so during my time, kind of through Davenport and after, I've had the opportunity to work at small companies, mid-sized companies, enterprise companies, and consulting companies. And so then after I worked for enterprise healthcare for a while, I decided, I really want to start my own company. I've always had that dream, I've always had that drive, and I was in that time of life where I said, now's the time to do it. And so far it's been the riskiest thing I've ever done, but it's also been the most rewarding thing I've ever done. And so something I feel very strongly about. I love business, I love technology, I love music, the arts. I love what I do in the morning. I get to wake up, I love life, and work is just part of that. So that's how I approach life, and that's how I approach entrepreneurship in general. But,
I forgot about that.
yeah.
That's right, so. Good, well, yeah, I'm Ann Vidro, so a little bit about me. My background is that I graduated from Davenport in '96, so the old building downtown on Fulton, and I went on to get my CPA, so I worked at a public accounting firm here in town for a while. I got my license, and then I went out and I did some consulting for a while, and I also was, for a little while anyways, CFO of a German company, actually for North America here, for a production company that made, or manufacturing company that made printed circuit boards that went inside computers and things. And so I too have worked for some smaller and some larger companies, and of course with my public accounting, I kind of got a kind of a scope, you might say, of watching different businesses. And while I was there, I was what you'd call profit improvement consultant. So I'd come into businesses and help tweak certain things so that hopefully they would make more money. And so negotiating things with banks and vendors, and then helping hopefully meet with marketing and sales and increase the top line too. So I'm what you would call a small business addict, because I really have a problem with wanting to start businesses every time I see an opportunity. And so the way I've done it is I've partnered with people. So it seems often I run into entrepreneurs or people who want to be entrepreneurs. They have this awesome skill set. Great example is this great concrete guy, right? He is awesome at pouring concrete. If he gets business like crazy, and he's really good at it, but he can't even balance his checkbook. So for a while I was a partner in a concrete company, and I've done that in waste management, so like a dumpster company. I've owned part of a screen printing company here in town, and then I actually, right now, I am co-owner with a wonderful person who I actually got the opportunity to work with for like 7 years, and this ties into being an entrepreneur, I would say. I've seen a lot of partnerships in both my experience, but also watching in that public accounting realm. good ones and not so good. And so I always tell people, make sure, it's a lot like a marriage. Really date for a long time before you get married because it's hard to part ways and it can get really ugly. And but if you find the right one, if you find that soulmate for your business, it's amazing, and I've done that. So my day job is I'm half owner in Creative Studio Promotions, and believe it or not, being an accountant, I'm in a marketing company, and so what we do is we make online stores. Mainly is kind of our sweet spot for large companies like Spectrum. We hold the exclusive contract for them. So anytime you see their branded merch, like mugs and pens and shirts and things like that, with their logo on, our company has produced that. So we do that across the nation and ship around the world. So it's the case we ship around the world for them. So I love what I do. I'm someone in that marketing, I'm in that sales, more business role though. I would say I'm the business side of things. I have a partner who's amazing at sales. So very proud of our team. Just a couple of bragging rights. We've been in business 6 years now. We've been top women-owned business. We've hit the Inc. 500 list, Inc. 5000 list, I remember, I think it was the top 15 companies to watch in the state of Michigan 2 years ago. So we've seen rapid growth, and again, it's because we have an amazing team there. And then I also am a half owner with my husband in a company that produces triathlons. So you know what a triathlon is, it's a bike run event, and we put on 2 pretty large events here in Grand Rapids. The Grand Rapids Triathlon and the Michigan Titanium. And then we have a third business as well, and that's our real estate investment company. So we own several residential real estate pieces of property, you might say. He manages those, and now we're venturing into vacation properties too. So we're starting down that road. But yeah, I'm always in conversation with entrepreneurs. I have one on the table right now that is pretty interesting, and I always take the time to dig into those because you never know where they'll go. And a lot of them never come to anything, but it's to me always worth the conversation and the exploration. So one of the things Mike asked me to do was share a little bit about Davenport and how it truly, I would say Davenport changed my life. I'll try to do this without getting too emotional because it really means a lot to me. I was in high school and I didn't really know what to do. I wasn't sure where to go. I have 2 sisters that went into the military, and Davenport came to my accounting class of all things and had us set goals. And I look back on that, and I graduated in 1989, so a long time ago, right? I was a senior. Yeah, I was a senior at the time, and the counselor came in and had us set goals, and I'd never done that before. And so, I look back and I shared with Mike, if you look at my LinkedIn profile, you'll see the video that Davenport did about my story, and just the inspiration that Davenport provided to me and the direction in my life. I was the first one out of 6 kids that were going to college, and I was second to baby. So it truly had a huge impact on me and my family, and just all the wonderful things that I learned through Davenport. And the fact that the instructors had the real life experience really impacted me because, to me, I knew at a very young age, for some reason, I wanted to own a business or be somewhat of a business owner in some capacity. And, talking to those instructors through the years to have them guide me in some of the ventures that I had been involved with and the things, I worked full-time while I went to school. And so just the things I learned at school and how much it helped my career and how much my career really helped my studies. So, I try to mentor as many young people as I can, both formally and informally, and I always tell them that, like, all that experience and the networking, the people you meet, and, students that I meet, and teachers, and, just everything that through Davenport and how it's really, shaped not only my career, but my life. And so that truly is why I have such a love and a passion for that. So, anyways, yes, if you can't tell.
Well, thank you, guys. I mean, there's so many things that I want to talk about.
Should we keep talking about Davenport?
No, I'm sorry.
My background is Davenport. So like I said, graduated in 2007, but I also came back and I taught for 3 years. And so I think back to some of my courses that kind of prepped me for starting a company. So like I said, at the time, I only took technology-related courses. But interspersed with those technology courses were, business management, was accounting, was finance. So these are things that you don't often think of. It's not specifically related to your career. It wasn't at the time. But these were the building blocks that actually allow you to even make this a possibility. Because it's one of those things, like you take a marketing class, like who's an actual customer of yours? Well, they might have to want what you're selling, and they have to have the money at the time. So like that's what validates a true lead. So it's the same thing with starting a company. Like you have to have the knowledge, but you have to have, like there's this building block, these fundamentals that you need to have. And then you feel like, okay, this is even an option for me to take. So while you're here, I would say some of the big things that impacted my life was there were different technology groups. I actually helped start several, like the West Michigan Cisco User Group. There was the Grand Rapids ISSA, which is a security-related technology group. So there were all these groups and events, and events like this to attend. That I always tell my students, it's like that old saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know. We've all heard that. But I would say don't stop there. It's not who you know, it's who knows you. And when they think of you, is it a positive thought? Do they actually, when they have a problem, are you the front of mind problem solver? So I think those are the things that being involved in Davenport, being involved in these groups, these are some of the things that this school has done a phenomenal job providing. And to echo Ann, like the teachers that I had, I still keep in touch with some of them. Because these are people that now have become peers. And I remember the moment where, I started, kind of coming into my own and started being involved in the community. And there's that point where you're saying, like, okay, the person that was my mentor is now, like, just a peer. That's a really cool transformation. And so I'd say get involved, stay involved in your school. Coming to events like this is how you meet people. This is how you present yourself, your personal brand. So I think that's a really important part of, if you ever think about starting a company, it's not just the product or the service you're providing. As the owner, as the entrepreneur, you are really that brand for quite a while.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right, especially if you're going to be taking on the face of that brand, or be the primary person building whatever it is that you're going to be building. We found that in Detroit as well. And what we found was that we didn't necessarily, our marketing in that city, if we based it around something of, hey, come and enjoy our product and service, it was not going to, because that's what everybody else was doing. Every other company was saying, hey, this is what we have, this is what we're selling, look at this, look at us, look at me, look at this, look at us, look at me, which is the game, that's marketing. It's basically how much attention you can get for the cheapest amount of money. And hopefully that can turn into something. But there's a difference between advertising and branding. And I think what you're referring to is a personal brand and an identity, that when a triggering event happens, which means when something happens to somebody where they actually need a product or service that relates anything close to what you do, they're thinking of you first with that top of mind lens. And that's a fantastic point. Both Ann and Carlos, I want to go back to you guys here because, I want to talk about proof of concept and I want to talk about strategy. Because, you talked about all the ventures that you started, and James, I know you started a ton too, if you jump in at any part of this. And when individuals have an idea, ideas are great, but I think a lot of times they lack the perspective of what strategy do I need to have in place for fulfillment of this idea. And I'd like you guys to speak to that a little bit, because one of the things that I know I struggled with as a young entrepreneur is I had every great idea in history in the world. And I just didn't, I never had any real way of capitalizing on that. And I never had any real way of proving my concepts. And we had a conversation earlier this week around that. And I'd like you to just touch on some of the things that you've seen with some of the guidance you've been able to give through both your foundation and the other entrepreneur consulting teaching you do.
Sure. I think a lot of people have ideas of a business, right? And sometimes the mistake, if you will, is they keep elaborating on that idea because it fulfills their own, it feels better, it feels good for them, right? Because it's a need for them, or it's their idea, etc. So of course it's great. Why? Because it's my idea. I'm great. It's about that. So, but the earlier that you can prove that that idea is needed by at least one more person, and if it is, then you might have a business. Because as an example, people will come to me during the class and say, I want to start a restaurant. Why? I love to eat and I love to cook. Who else loves your food? Well, my husband, my kids.
Yeah.
So aside from that, you're captive, really captive. Who else enjoys your food? Like, well, I don't know. Okay, then you don't have a business because you're not going to sell your food to your family, right? So that is the proof of the concept. And the earlier you can do that, the sooner you can do it, the sooner you can move on with following that route of the business, or move on to a different idea, right? Because I think a lot of people, when we talk about entrepreneurship, it's about having ideas. It's more about solving problems rather than just coming up with an idea, right? What is hurting people, what is needed, and it is interesting that Ann mentioned trash hauling, for example. The dirtiest, the awfulness, the earlier in the day that can happen is the better the business you have, I guess. Because nobody likes to take trash out, right? Nobody likes to touch trash. So things like that are just phenomenal. But of course, you need to prove that there is at least one more person that coincides with you, that has that pain, that has that need, that people come to me like, oh yeah, I really would love if someone does what you just mentioned.
That's perfect, and I'm going to build on that step, and I want to go to from there. Once you have that proof of concept, developing the strategy, and then I want to end James a little bit talking about some of the risk too involved, because you mentioned in your intro what you did was the riskiest thing you've ever done, and that's just something that's inherent if you're going to be a part of this, and then we'll open it up to some questions if that's okay with you too. But you know, one of the things that I see is once people prove concepts, once they have, okay, this can work, then it comes into how do I strategically make this work for me? I can lay concrete, right? But how do I make this a business? Being able to do something and being able to fulfill a need is not necessarily making a business out of it, right? So you have built businesses from that standpoint, from the not necessarily the qualitative, what service can I provide, but the quantitative, what are the things that can be tested and measured to actually make this a business. So if you could speak a little bit to the strategy that you've had to come in from the business side of things and maybe coach and teach people on that they're missing from being really, really good technicians. Has anybody ever read The E-Myth? Anyone ever read that book?
I was just about to say, that's the book I recommend to everyone.
Exactly.
I tell people, if you don't have time to read that book, you don't have time to start a company.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah, you are just not anywhere near ready.
And most people who operate small businesses unfortunately fall into the vast majority of the pyramid, which is the technician mindset, the technician workers function of doing stuff. And they can only grow so far, right? They can only do so much. And the strategy is what helps them bring out of that. So if you could speak to that, I think everybody would benefit a lot from that.
Yeah, so in my old consulting days, we used to call working on or in. We actually used to give a hat out that you either turn it around on or in. I think it was full-time even. And so, of course, I'm a numbers person, right? I'm an accountant. So that is what it all adds up to me. So it's using those numbers to help determine, one, where you're going and where you've been. And, if we sit down and we do some projections, and, we can say, okay, this is how much cash you need in the bank because you're going to be turning a loss for the first few months or years. Where's that money coming from? Often I have entrepreneurs who will be like, we were talking about this on the phone a little bit, it's like, I made the decision to start a business and it's Friday, you're quitting your full-time job on Monday, and it's like, how about we do both for a while and let's, prove out this concept a little bit. And not to say that maybe there is only one other person who loves what you do, or five, but you could still do it on something on the side and really get a lot of enjoyment out of that. And I actually find out several people that I deal with who have multiple streams of income, and so a side business is awesome actually. And so it kind of gives you some more passion and some more fire, and you're interested in it. You still have your full-time job that's paying the bills. So, yeah, for me, it's sitting down, doing those projections, and then doing some market testing, starting kind of small, maybe leaning on some friends who might be able to pitch in and help you out with some things you're doing, depending on where you're at financially. It really, that's what it kind of all boils down to. And are you self-financing? Are you pulling this out of your house? Are you putting it on credit cards? Let's hope not. Or do you have some investors? What does all that look like? And that kind of determines where do you go from here. Obviously, there's like certain components. You've got to talk about, sales and marketing, and then what about production or fulfillment? And then you've got, your accounting side of things, and then who's going to be making some of the managerial decisions and the vision type stuff. But, sitting down and kind of nailing that out, and maybe even if it's not a full-fledged business plan, at least answering some of those questions ahead of time. And then it's, determining what kind of entity are you going to set up. S Corp, C Corp, LLC, sole proprietor, go for the checkbook, start getting things rolling. And then that's where the rubber meets the road kind of is, okay, the money coming in and out, and what does that look like as time goes by? So some of the people that I've dealt with, they've already got the idea rolling, and they might just be struggling financially. It could be some tweaks. So if you're starting something brand new, how much of a check can you write, and how long can you run on that money? And how quickly can that income start covering it? So there's a lot of moving parts when it comes to that, especially depending on the type of business. Is this a service business where you're the only expense, or maybe a computer, or you've got a home office? Or are you, talking to someone right now about starting like it's called a tuk-tuk service in another country, to capture cruise ship business? Well, there's some pretty big investments there, right? And equipment and things like that. And it's very intriguing, and it's pretty cool, but how much, do you have, and how far is it going to go, and how long can you live? I coached someone who would open a consignment shop, and quite honestly, I've always dreamed of opening a consignment shop, and so I was really excited to help this person. And, it was better have, 12 months in rent in the bank, because you just don't know. And, it was too bad, because around month 7 or 8, they'd gotten behind and they just didn't have enough to get started, and they chose to start anyways. They quit their full-time job, and man, just when the business started getting going, the landlord's evicting, right? And now all of a sudden the business, they just thought, what if you would wait a year to start and you would have saved a little more? So I try to help people not do that. I mean, the energy and the momentum and all that. I mean, the opportunity for success now might be out years, because you kind of lost it all, right? I mean, you started too soon, or you didn't plan well enough, or you never want to have failure to launch because you want to overanalyze. But I don't usually find that with entrepreneurs, right? They want to go now. They don't even want. They're like, it'll figure itself out. I just know I love this, and it's a great idea, and I'm going full speed ahead. And then by the time it all comes to fruition, I mean, it can cost you marriages. It can cost you your home. I mean, it can be horrible, And so I really feel a duty almost to help them hopefully try to see that future as much as possible. And you're never 100%, but you can test the waters a lot. And the other thing to help with all of that is pick someone who's been there before, right? I mean, if you want to open a coffee shop, even if you can't talk to the local coffee shops, go to the next city. Call anyone you can. Talk to people who own them, who failed, who succeeded. As unique as you probably think your idea is, guaranteed there's probably one pretty close to it out there somewhere. So tap into that, and it's amazing how much entrepreneurs want to talk, right? Look at us. We love talking.
Yeah, get us to stop, right?
Right.
And it's dangerous for us to get bored, too. Like 4 companies, because once you learn how to start companies, like the 3rd or 4th one, it's just
no big deal. All the IRS get that all,
right, it's super simple. It's almost scarily simple.
Yeah, so I'll stop there, because I know there's lots of other good input, but, tag on to someone who's been there, done that, and both successful and not. I mean, some of the best lessons I've learned is working for owners. One ended up filing bankruptcy. And boy, did I was very young, I was still in school, and I just watched the whole, and I was just like, why are you building this building that you can never afford? Well, it was the demise, so they were great lessons for me to see success and failure, and I feel kind of fortunate in that way that I got to be so
There's a group coming, there's an event, it's called Failure Labs, and I think it was actually started by someone here in West Michigan, but it's become a national event where they actually bring together people and they talk about failures or things that have gone wrong. And like you're saying, you learn more. It's much cheaper to learn from other people's mistakes than to go through them yourself. Much cheaper.
That's huge, and it all leads back to the idea of risk, right? And that's kind of what it does, right? And so there's going to be risk in every single business venture that you do. It does not matter. There is no definition of the word entrepreneur that does not have the word risk closely attached to it.
But so there's risk working for someone else too.
And there is, and that's, 100%. And it's what type of risks you want to take, what you want to have, and there's a mindset around that. And there's a couple different ways to think around that. Obviously you can mitigate the risk by keeping things small, right? You don't want to over leverage, you don't want to over extend yourself in any way, shape, or form. Or if you have a system for fulfillment, which some people do, they have a proven concept that they've done over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And you know that concept will be proven, or at least there's very good data to support that. You can begin to take bigger risks. You can begin to put more zeros behind whatever number you started with in that business plan. But it comes back to having that system for fulfillment. Because it is a lot cheaper to figure out something from somebody else than any, which is why you see franchises that have the 90th percentile success rate. Why? Because they have a proven concept. And they get to say that they sold 1 billion burgers, even though that location has never even come close to that. Right? So they get to do those types of things. And so if you have that type of fulfillment, you can very easily step into those risky waters, I feel. But I think a lot of times people fail to launch because they don't know what that fulfillment looks like. And they don't really have any type of real concept to be able to actually functionally stay consistent with that over the long haul. Either they haven't budgeted properly, they don't have the right experience, or whatever it might be. But you still have to, in this world, be okay with the idea of risk. Right? I have a different concept on credit, debt, and leverage than maybe other people do because of how my business model is built and because of how I build a business. So I have zero problem putting a new business venture or a new concept on a credit card if I know I'm going to get a return on that and make more than what I'm paying in interest. Because then whatever I just purchased became free because it's not my money to begin with. But I have to have a system to fulfill on that debt. If I don't have a system to fulfill on that debt, I'm in a whole heck of a lot of trouble and nobody's going to give me any money, right? And that's where some of those different things come in, credit scores, payback scores, all that other stuff. It's important to understand that, specifically from an entrepreneurial or investor perspective, because if you are geared like an entrepreneur, you're more scared of having a job than you are of going into that family. You just are. If you're geared and truly wired that way, you just are. And that's one of the things I'd like you to talk about, because you started companies over and over again, you've had the corporate backgrounds, right? And you're a very analytical guy, you're an IT guy, inputs equal outputs, it's just the way.
Well, and you're talking about risk, you're talking to a security person, like that's what we spend all day talking about.
Yeah.
And so as you're talking about the way you leverage debt, I keep thinking, boy, I hope your algorithm's good.
Sure.
Because that's what it is. You've got this process where you're making sure your income outweighs the debt you're paying out. But it reminds me of playing poker. Like good poker players know how to gamble. Great poker players aren't gambling. Because good poker players play with the cards. Great poker players play with the people. They're working statistics. They know odds. They have an algorithm. They have a process. They're not. It's a different type of mentality that you approach the game with. And so when it comes to, I guess, risk or starting a company in the technology world, we often talk about MVP, a minimally viable product. And so it's a very common phrase in the technology, the app startups, where you want to just get the basic app out there. You don't want it too complicated. It doesn't have to be complete. I mean, Google Mail was in beta for like how many years? 7, 8 years? But everybody uses it today. I mean, the Facebook was just, Zuckerberg started it, over a weekend. And it blew up. So there's these type of things where you can quickly bring something to market. You can test it, you can try it. It's a very common idea. So I guess me personally, when I started Tech Connect, so it was kind of interesting. I left Enterprise Healthcare. It's the largest employer in West Michigan. So you can probably figure it out if it's Google searches. But so it's a very secure role. There were 2 people in the company that was doing what I was doing. So job security was just fine. When people heard that I decided I was going to start my own company and I was just leaving, I think some people thought I was probably crazy. They probably thought I'd be back in 3 months. But I said, this is it. And so at the time, I knew I could go back. So in some ways, it was the riskiest thing. But there was also a time where I'm like, I could get a job for other companies as well. But also, I had spent multiple years before that building relationships in the community. So I knew people. I knew that this idea, people need technology. They need someone to install the network. They need someone to set up their servers. And security is becoming ever increasingly in demand. So it's one of those things where, yes, it was risky, but in some ways, it was kind of a no-brainer. I'm like, people need this. It's not that big of a deal. It's kind of like gambling where, you're hedging your bets. You could fail, but you've always got a backup plan. I think
And that all sounds good, but talk about what it felt like in here when you made that decision. Because there's a lot of people, I think, who are trying to make that transition or look at making that transition, and it's what that feeling makes them think, like, oh my gosh, they're crapping their pants because it's a brand new experience. And they should be, right? Because it's brand new, you've never done it before, and it shows that you're human.
Oh yeah.
But how do you
so the fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
Is, I would say that's like there's this this gap that you're trying to jump from one plateau to the other. So it's the fear of the unknown. And one of my mantras is always remove the fear. Remove the fear. Even if you're just creating something simple, let's bring it down to a small scale. It's like just an event. Well, where do people park? Where are they gonna what should they wear? Is there gonna be food? Well, does anyone have any like gluten allergies or wheat allergies or so you remove the fear. So you always be very descriptive with your information. So starting a company, there's a lot of fears. What do I do about taxes? What do I do about accounting? What do I do? How do I actually fulfill? I have this idea. How do you actually build the fulfillment side of it and actually get the product out there? So there are processes, there are tools, there's something called the business canvas that's very useful. It's you can do it on a piece of paper and it's all quadrants. And so you can actually think of how would I actually fulfill this business based on an idea. Who's your target market? So what is the value proposition that you have? How is that value proposition going to reach the target market? Well, the target market's going to reaches the target market by marketing. And then what are the revenue streams that are returned? So you kind of create this cycle. But then you think about on the fulfillment side, well, here's my value prop. What do I need to actually fulfill that? So who are my key players, and how does that return? How do they actually deliver? So you think about things this way. It's a very, very simple process or algorithm, if you will. But just taking someone's abstract and putting it down on paper will remove so many fears. Then it becomes, okay, now I've identified it. So in psychological worlds, they say if you have these fears, the best way to deal with the fear is to name it, identify it. Say, this is it. And then think, well, what's the worst that can happen?
And I would say that also fear goes directly related to risk, right? Entrepreneurship is about risk. There's no matter that's what it is. And you go through life as an entrepreneur mitigating risk. Right? But also you have to find out how much risk can you stop? How much risk do you feel okay with? And going to that point, in the MVP, the minimum viable product, there are ways where you can prove your product, prove your concept, mitigating risk by starting small. So again, someone comes to me and says, I want to start a business. Why? Because they see themselves opening, sometimes right? They see themselves opening the doors of the store or the restaurant, and people come in and, oh, hello, how you doing? And see kind of this Disney type of thing. But exactly. But in reality, they open one day, and nobody walks in, right? And then there's 3 months later, and the rent is due, and they don't have the rent. Why? Because they quit their jobs, and all of a sudden it's like, this is not what I was promised. Well, not promised, really, right? So what I'll tell people is instead of spending $40,000, $50,000 on opening a restaurant next Monday, start selling your wares Monday, right? So in our case, you start selling tamales, right? And you go to an office and say, here, I have 3 dozen, you want? And then, of course, that's how you prove your concept again. Like, worst case scenario, you're out $400 because in reality, you can't make tamales to save your life. But then, now you know, right? And then don't quit your job, right? Do it on the side. Now, of course, Elon Musk, right? You can build SpaceX on an MVP, right? You have to build this massive
Right. It's kind of a barrier to entry.
Exactly. But almost for every line of business, there is that way of starting small. All the way to start small is work for someone else.
Mm-hmm.
That's where that's when you earn your that's where you learn. That's where you get your feet wet. And then again, also that's at some point you're looking at your boss, the owner of the company, you're like, my God, he's miserable as an entrepreneur. I'm not doing that,
Yeah.
right? Because not all of us are caught to be entrepreneurs, and it's not good or bad. Some of us are caught to work for someone else, and that's absolutely fine, right? But it's about when someone wants to start a business, that individual, and of course, if he or she, if they're married, there's a partnership. Both have to analyze what is our tolerance for risk, and write it down, put it somewhere together, because we have to see it, and it's got to be black and white. It's related to cost, it's related to money, it's related to sometimes some relationship.
And I love the practical points, because some people, the moment you say, go out and do it, at a tiny scale, just do it, make it, they won't do it. They refuse to do it, but they have these big, grandiose ideas, like it's huge, abstract, you say that's, like they see themselves being the CEO, greeting people at the door, giving free drinks at the bar. That is not reality. Reality is that you're in the back of the kitchen, scraping down because your chef didn't show up. So make them do something practical at a tiny, tiny scale. Most will not. They say, success comes in overhauls, and it looks like work, so people turn it away. Very common. The other thing that you mentioned is ownership. I give ownership. I think about this a lot. I try to talk to other, there's a lack of diversity in technology. So we always talk about how do we improve the different groups so there's more representation. It's ownership. Ownership. And not, like you said, not everyone is meant to be an owner of a company, but you can own your job, you can own your actions, you can own your mind. And the moment you start taking responsibility for your actions, your mind, your habits, your character, your life changes. How you see the world changes. Life doesn't just happen to you. You can go out and happen to the world. And that's a fundamental psychological change that is so powerful. That suddenly you're in charge. You have control, you have autonomy. It's amazing. So just do it. Do it. Try it. Small scale. Do it. Do it.
Quick story. I was lucky enough to have gone to a training trainers at the Kaufman Foundation. They teach entrepreneurship, right? And so we were being taught how to teach entrepreneurship. And so there were deans, there were professors, there were etc. And at some point they said, all right, these 5 of you come up with an idea. 5 minutes. We got this idea. All right, now go to the university across the street. University of Kansas University, Kansas State, whatever. So now prove your concept, right? And talk to students. My gosh. I mean, unfortunately, there were some professors, some deans, some of them, they would just go along, oh, that's kind of beneath. And I was like, oh my God, I can't. Now, of course, for me, it was like, I've never done it, but I have to do this. If I'm going to teach someone, I have to do this, right?
Yes.
And of course, there were also other deans, other professors that would be like, okay, I'll hold the recording on the cell phone, and then you do the interview, whatever. But yeah, the moment that you open the door and you talk to the first customer, that is when you feel. I've never had that, and you feel like,
It's a feeling we all know, right?
this is for me, or like, no, this is not,
And
someone complains,
and so many great things, guys. I wish I was time. The starting small and that proving that concept and getting over that view and that hump and that this right here, it's okay, guys, if you can't do that. And it's okay if entrepreneurship isn't the path that you need to go down. That's an okay thing too, right? But you won't know unless you act, unless you do something, unless you try it. And that's where a lot of people fall short, is that mindset, that action mindset, being able to actually, I'm reading a book called Extreme Ownership right now. It's written by William Garrett and Jocko something. They're like former Marines before his name played from Jocko, which is their Navy SEALs, which sounds really cool just by the names, right? But they talk about one of the things that they teach Navy SEALs whenever they're in a really high intense situation is to stop, look around, make a call. Stop, look around, make a call.
Observe, orient, decide, act.
Exactly. In the action, if you don't act, nothing is ever going to happen.
It's basic physics. Not acting is a decision.
And
a lot of people default to, sometimes it's often not the right decision.
And
but then you accept whatever happens to you.
yes,
That's
every time somebody comes to a point of decision, what they're doing is they're running it through their point of view, their point of origin, their concept of how they believe things are going to be. And what they're saying is either yes, no, or wait. Well, wait is the exact same thing as no. There is no difference between those two. So if you have enough information, and in my case, when I have 60% of the information, I can act because I can contractually tie something up and get time to be able to figure out all the unknowns, right? But in some cases, you need to be able to act with not having all the information. You need to be able to analyze what's around you, problem solve to the best of your knowledge, and even like you said, it gets a lot of people in trouble if they're like, I'm going to act and just figure it out, right? That gets a lot of people in trouble. But you still have to be willing to take that step. The willingness to take that step and act in those small increments around things that you can control, and taking that type of ownership in any type of situation. I think that separates a lot of people. And I think sometimes it holds people back because they haven't been taught how to do that, and they haven't ever experienced that. And that's something that I mean, just great feedback. I want to stop, though, on the general conversation that we're all having up here, and I want to open it up for some questions, and just see what you guys might, those of you who came in who are looking at starting a business, those of you who are here who are looking for some sort of feedback, guidance in whatever way, shape, or form from these three brilliant individuals who came out here and were willing to share with us. What do you guys have for that?
A question.
Yeah.
You're talking about your business stuff, and I don't know what your family status is, but how do your significant others react to you doing this, I guess? I have a problem. I'm trying to get moving on, but my wife is rich. She's grew up in her dad worked in the same place for 33 years. She refuses to go any place else where she's at, despite the fact she's miserable, and she sees me as someone who has to do that, and I'm refusing. And so it's a real battle. You know, the only time she supports it is when she sees dollar signs. And as soon as you figure out I'm not doing as fast as I need to, she shuts down and goes someplace else.
Yeah.
So how was that for you guys with that?
I'm single. So.
I can speak to that. So I have a little advantage. When I met my husband, I was somewhat involved with the business, but he was not at all. This is like a whole other kind of world for him, I might say, but he's maybe a little more, I would say, conservative, but he analyzes it a little longer than I do, and as much as I say you need to wait at times, it's definitely I'm a person of action. Once the decision is there, it's proven, I'm like, go now. And, but I think it just, I think understanding what your spouse needs, and if she's unsure about the money, then setting expectations and goals and things, and so that's what we'll do is, we just made a recent investment, and I spent a little more than what we had agreed on at the time, but now he's glad I did to acquire this, and it's paying for itself. But we sat down and said, okay, what are we willing to live with, and how much the first year, how much the second, and what's the payback here? And so we agreed on that part. So that gave him the security of making the investment, and knowing what he needs is important, because if he doesn't agree, I won't do it. I won't, because I'm not gonna give that up for what it's gonna. This business is not gonna give me what I get with this relationship. And I have a 2.5-year-old now, and so I've started a lot of these things, and then that came into my life. She came into my life, and I'm like, whoo, it's a balance, it's a juggling act, and so it's a lot of communication. But just him knowing, or maybe her knowing that I pick you first over everything. That sometimes is all they need to hear. That's sometimes what I need to hear from him for things when he wants to do something. And then I'm like, oh, okay, as long as I do know I'm still first, I'm not battling that, then all of a sudden the wall comes down and I'm open a little more to risk and a little bit more ideas and things. And so, but it's setting the expectation. And, you know, I hate to say this, but as women in general, I think we're more security motivated. And I gotta know that you're not gonna lose our house and our kids aren't gonna have anywhere to live. Like, you know, your crazy idea is great and all, but here's the deal. This is all we're willing to put in. And once you hit that, you're done. Was that cool? Okay, then go. But you're not touching this. Like, this is off limits. This is our families. And so conversations like that are really important, I think. So, and from the public accounting days, there's nothing worse to watch, you know, is a marriage be destroyed by the business, or the business be destroyed by a broken marriage, or both, you know, and it goes hand in hand. It goes, I can't tell you, I always dreamed that I was like, okay, I need to hook up with a divorce attorney who knows business owners, because if a business owner goes for a divorce, his business is so vulnerable. Like, it almost always, a lot of times, bankruptcy file, I mean, it just all goes together. And so
the person's probably going to attack the very thing that they feel broke up the marriage, which is your business. They're going to go share.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, sorry, I don't know if that answered it, but.
That helps. I mean, it gives me that encouragement, but yeah.
You know, I will put it in two entrepreneurial concepts. A proof of concept and also risk mitigation, right? So it seems like there's two different ways of you see risk. You're probably she's probably risk averse and you're not.
Right.
So I guess trying to find a middle ground, push her a little bit more and you give a little bit. So that's one. How you probably by starting small, she will feel a little bit more comfortable. Okay, that's fine. But the second piece is you are the concept. You see yourself as the concept, right? Meaning, assuming that you're an expert in that field where you want to go into business,
Right.
You know, every time you make a right decision, it's like you're proving to that other person, to your spouse, that you are on the right track. Of course, you're assuming that you're human. There's never 100% right rate of failure. But she will come. She will start to feel more and more comfortable, kind of moving that threshold of risk a little bit higher. In the last piece, follow on hand, right on assuring, in a way also on paper, not a contract, but you know, I would not do ever this. Put risk our home, our family, our kids. So it's my livelihood. So like.
And write it down.
Yes.
Seriously.
It's mitigating that risk, right?
I would say the tiny bit that I'll throw in there is, you know, you talk about, you know, identifying failure. Be okay with failure. You have to be okay, but also be able to define failure. And that's something a lot of people don't think about, because there's been a lot of people that have started a company and they've kept it alive way too long.
Knowing when to say it's time.
Yeah.
Correct. Know when to cast your ships, cut your losses, however you want to phrase it. But identify what's a success, what's a failure, and have those numbers, and like have that contract with your wife. I have really tight contracts with our clients, and it keeps everybody friends. It works well.
So, and what I was going to say that I'm not married. I was married to an individual who had a much different perspective on comfort and risk than I did. And at the end of the day, for me, and for her, it was better for us not to be here. But one of the things we didn't do, and we never did, and this was on me as somebody who was the risky individual, was we never sat down and established really why I wanted to risk everything. Right? So, like, okay, assuming I start now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, what does my life need to look like in order for this to be a good decision? And why is that so important? Because people are going to respond to the why more than they're going to respond to the what. Once you have the why, and Simon Sinek wrote a great book called Start with Why. It's
So
absolutely
fantastic.
fantastic.
Yep.
And once you get to that why, and you guys can both get behind that, then all it is about a strategic conversation on how to get there. Because what you're really talking about is, yes, you're talking about a marriage, but you're also talking about a business partnership. And you're not necessarily looking for someone to give you permission, you're looking for support, right? And gaining support usually comes from having a conversation around, this is what I want to accomplish, why? And then from there, it's about defining, okay, what are the expectations, the clear expectations of this? This is what I want to do to get to the why. This is what it looks like if it works in 2 years. And this is what it looks like if it doesn't. And this is how we're going to do it. That is something that I've seen through, part of what I do is try to teach new entrepreneurs how to get started the right way. And I run into this scenario quite a bit. The way I solved it now is my girlfriend who runs my business as the operations manager. So that also helps. So she has a lot less concern. Yeah, she has a lot less concern on that too. So I hired her there, so she is, in charge of things. But in the same respect, having that defined, having that definition there on both ends, and really knowing why you're trying to get to this has helped people a lot. So
meaning I have to figure that aspect out, because
I would,
yeah. I'm one of those. I'm a constant learner. I will take any opportunity to learn about any subject and get my hands on to the best of my ability.
Yeah.
And a lot of my business ideas come from that. Meaning I'm not necessarily an expert, but I'm smart enough to go, hey, I have a potential here.
Yeah.
So my poor wife, who goes, I've never heard you talk about it
Right.
before. What do you mean you want to do
And
this?
so she doesn't understand why. That's what it comes down to, right? So maybe you don't know either. And so maybe that's a conversation you guys should have together. That can be fun too, and it can be scary sometimes, but it can be fun. Awesome. John, you got a question too, my man?
I took my question.
All right.
I haven't really I've never really been scared of proof of concept or risk, because I kind of burned the candle at all 3 ends. And so, for example, I have a technology consulting company right now.
Good.
It's just sole proprietorship, maybe 6 to 10 clients at a time. But when I first got that idea, I went to the local grocery store and talked to everybody that walked in, and I don't know what to think of my idea. Got pretty good feedback, so I went door to door after that. And that's how I proved my concept before I actually started. I'm not scared of that, but the one fear I do have is I recently just had, right now, I have a 4.5 and having worked on one. And so being a person that brings the candle, all 3 ends, the work-life balance, which is exactly what he was kind of talking about, is something that I ask everybody that has that entrepreneurial spirit, has that has a project. And that's pretty much going to be my question, but for the most part, because pretty much answered it, came to the same answer that I have for communication. So, yeah.
In technology, recurring revenue is great.
What's that?
Recurring revenue. Figure out a business model that supports the lifestyle that your significant other needs.
Yes.
So if it needs to be guaranteed income, well, then you should go into MSP.
Yeah.
You should go into a managed service provider type structure.
And whether it's with that company or whatever I may do, it's just it's the mindset that concerns me. Because whenever I do, I approach it in that same manner. Sometimes I take it.
And I think that's a huge point, because you mentioned this, not everyone's meant to be a business owner, but you can be entrepreneurial in a Fortune 5 company. Just because it's a gigantic company, you can still take that entrepreneurial, the energy and that mindset, and what you can do, you will quickly climb that corporate ladder if it's an entrepreneurial focused company. I've been to some companies, being a consultant, we get to see a lot of behind the scenes things. And some of the companies are just, no ways. No ways, 95. Here's your cube, don't leave it. Some people cry in that.
I think the other point you brought up that was good about work-life balance. When I had my daughter 2.5 years ago, that was something I was faced with, because I had really 2 businesses I'm pretty involved with. So the creative studios, and then the triathlon is almost a full-time job too. So my answer has been delegate. And so I've hired personal assistants. I have a friend who comes and helps meal prep for me, put freezer meals in the freezer. And so when I get home from work, I don't go into the office until 9 or 10 o'clock, and I made that deal with my partner, my business partner, and she covers mornings, I cover afternoons. And then I leave around 3 to pick my daughter up, and then after she goes to bed, I'm on the laptop. But, when I get home, I pull a meal out of the freezer, I throw it in the oven, and then I'm playing with her, because I'm not gonna, what I mean? And I talk to a lot of women business owners about that, and it's hard, because I love to cook. I like to clean. I don't mind doing those things, but when she came into my life, I said, man, am I gonna spend an hour preparing a meal and then doing all the dishes? You know what I mean? And so I have to give that up for a few years. and being what I think is really a great homemaker, let's call it, and business owner, because being with her is more important. And so you do, and I say no to a lot. I mean, I say no a lot. I get invited to a lot of groups and boards and things, and I'm very choosy because that's the deal with my husband and I'm like, keep me in check because I like to say yes to everything. And so it can be, it's a real detriment to the family life. And in the end, that's my number one. Like, it's gotta be my number one because that is truly where I find the most joy in life, right? I mean, a business, they can come and go. I can find other business, you know what I mean? Whatever. But boy, that is irreplaceable to me. So, yeah.
It's really about like consciousness of that too. You know, you could say it's about, it is number one, but it's really easy to just get really caught up in things and not conscious of it.
I have an accountability partner every Monday morning at 9:30. We do a quick 10-minute call. What's your goals for this week? What's your schedule look like? How are you balancing? What do you need to say no to? You know, those, because I need that. I know I need that to stay quality, you know.
So who is your, not who is your accountability partner, but how did you come in contact? Is it somebody
It's a
you
friend.
know?
Yeah, it's a friend through the years, and she wanted to start setting goals, and we started setting goals, and over time it just got down to a weekly coaching call, and literally 10 minutes. She's out in Vegas. It's 6:30 her time, 9:30 mine. Works great. Drop my daughter off. I make the call, and then we shoot an email of what's like the top 5 things you want to accomplish this week or what you focused on, and that's it. And just me saying it and writing it, all of a sudden, you know, is she really listening half the time? I don't really know. But it doesn't matter to me. You know what I mean? I'm accountable. So.
Just the fact she's willing to do it, because I seem to be the most motivated person in my circle. So everybody's like, you want to do that?
Yeah, more.
You do.
Well, that's what I mean.
Yes, and that's awesome. That's great. And that's here's I heard someone say one time you're going to end up to be the average of your 5 closest friends.
I am trying to find 5 good friends.
Yeah. and that's the thing is a lot of people seek that. A lot of people get held back by the haters, and they get held back by people who have that negative mindset, and that is fine for them. That's those people out there. That's totally cool, right? People come into circles like this because it's like-mindedness, and it's people who are like that. They have that same feeling right here. Like they're more scared of having a job than they are of family, right? And that is something that is fantastic and will always help, move and take those steps towards actually making that a complete problem. So really, really good question. Anybody else? Going once? Going twice? Awesome, rapid fire. Number one thing that you have learned from your experience getting started in entrepreneurship, what's the number one thing that you wish you could communicate to people just getting started or who want to get started?
I said already, not everybody is got to be, to have a business. An entrepreneurial mindset, let me rephrase that. An entrepreneurial mindset, anybody can have an entrepreneurial mindset and it will be rewarded anywhere. So some people call it intrapreneur, right? But whatever. So entrepreneurial mindset will always be rewarded, but not everybody's cut out to have a business, to their own business.
Yeah, I think it would just be, it's do something, make something, try it, make it, be okay with failure, but then know how to define failure.
For me, it's, find a mentor or a coach or somebody that will come alongside you in the details and is ahead of you who's been there, done that. I mean, that's just so valuable to learn from someone who truly you trust and that really is invested and that would want to take that time to coach you along the way.
For me, guys, it's awareness. Find out who you are and why you're around, and make every single decision you make from a perspective of gratitude, because you know what that is. So thank you guys so much. Appreciate it.